All right. Good evening, people, and happy 4th of July weekend. Yeah, no work for 3 days. Woohoo! All right. In case you guys haven't watched me before, welcome to Crossroads Disc Golf, where faith and frisbees combine, something like that. I don't know. So tonight, continuing with this kind of just showing you guys various methods that I use to dye discs. So far we did a tutorial on spin dyeing, and there's a lot of different things you can do with spin dyeing. I'll do some more of those, but we did an off-center spin dye. Um, and then the last one we did, just a few days ago, it was just Sunday. Um, we did two different dye methods. We did a shaving cream spiral dye, and then we did my patented Floetrol blossom method. Okay. Tonight we're just kind of going with something that a lot of people do this. So I mean, stencils are very popular. I personally really like doing stencils because I feel like it's the best way to customize your own frisbees. It's like, you buy a frisbee, a disc from the store, and it's got, case in point, it says, camera work. Here, I'm just gonna do this. Case in point, this one's just got that MVP Axiom Paradox stamp on it, right? This is one that this is like her main thrower. Um, to tell you something honestly, I'm kind of breaking a cardinal rule of disc dyeing tonight, and we're gonna see how it works out. But normally, I would advise against dyeing a disc that has a lot of wear. This has like a lot of scuffs and stuff on it, so where those scuffs are, it may not take dye. We're just gonna hope for the best. It's not too terribly beat up, but it has seen a lot of use. But it's Sarah's favorite disc, and she wanted something on it. She already picked out a stencil design that she wanted, so we're going to walk through the entire process of doing that. All right, so first things first, as I said before you dye any disc, always wash it. Even when it's been used in heavy rotation, I don't think it's ever been washed before, so I already did that. I washed it with magic eraser to make sure I got any that release agent stuff from the factory that keeps it from getting dye. It'll keep the dye from contacting the surface, and you can't see that stuff. You don't really even, and you can't feel it either. There's really no way to know if it's on there or not. So just to play it safe, always wash that plastic before you go to start a dye. Alright, and the other thing I'm going to do is we're going to take off this existing stamp. We're going to wipe it. I briefly touched on this before, but what I like to do is I like to chill the disc. I'll throw it in the freezer for about 5 minutes before we get started on it, right? Um, and after that, I'm just gonna wipe it with some acetone and like cotton swabs. Um, um, Actually, I'm gonna hand this to Sarah. Sarah, would you like to put this in the freezer? There you go. So she's gonna put it in the freezer, and in like 5 minutes or so, we'll take it out. So 7:03. At 7:08, we'll take it out of the freezer. Um, the reason that I do that, the reason that we put it in the freezer, I kind of went over this before, but hot and cold do kind of magic things to this dyeing process. Like I'm not like a chemistry expert or anything, but I've learned a lot about dealing with this stuff over the years of disc dyeing. And so what we're using is you can either call it a fabric dye or plastic dye. It's made to work on things that have polymers. So plastic have polymers, polyester has polymers. That's why it's got poly in the word, right? So that dye will like soak into the polymers and it will continue to migrate through the polymers. That's why over time dyes get blurry. They go all the way through to the other side of the disc eventually, and they're constantly migrating, and heat speeds up that process. And cold does the opposite. Cold slows down that process, and it makes it to where that dye does not migrate into the plastic or through the plastic. So if you get a disc cold enough, you keep it in the freezer, it won't take color. It won't take that dye. So I like to do this with it didn't really matter that much with that stamp probably because it's like a just silver foil stamp, but I always do this anyway. It's just my method, my go-to method. And so when you put it in the freezer and then take it out, that disc is still cold, and if there is a lot of color in that foil stamp, then when you wipe it off, you don't really run the risk of it soaking into the plastic and you discoloring the disc before you even start with your dye. This is really important if you're going to do something that has multiple colors and stuff like that. Um, I'm going to do a basic black outline on this one because it's a blue disc, so I'm not gonna try to color it. That's another disc dyeing 101 for you. The reason why we like to have white discs to start with is because you can only add dyeing only adds more color. It doesn't overpower a color, if that makes sense. Like, in other words, it's not like paint. You can't cover it up. It's going into the polymers. It's not just a surface coat. So if something is already like, say, a really dark purple, blue, or even black, there's really no point dyeing that thing. You're not going to get much color to show up on it. I've seen exceptions. I mean, some of these dyes, like I've seen people dye a jet black disc with like tons of like neon lemon zest, and they get some color into it. It's possible. I'm not telling you you can't do it. I'm just saying you're going to get less effect from it. So why bother? Um, Another thing, this dye 101, we stick to premium plastics that are like the harder plastics. Your rubbery plastics, like here's a good example. This is a Lone Star disc Victor plastic, right? It's rubbery. It kind of almost feels like an eraser type thing. Don't dye this stuff. I mean, if you really want to prove a point, yes, you can get it to take a dye. I'm not telling you it does not accept dye. You can get it to work. What I'm telling you is because it's a rubber blend, it's not going to last. It will fade within like 2 weeks and eventually it'll just disappear altogether. I dyed a putter with a solid black hot dip one time and it looked really cool. It is like dragon yin yang thing on it and put it in my bag and use it and everything. And like I said, within about 6 weeks, it was completely gone. It was just a red disc again. You couldn't even tell there was ever any black in it at all. It migrated completely through and completely out. So stick to your harder plastics. I could tell you. I mean, there's like charts and stuff, but I mean, once you kind of done this a few times, you don't really need a chart to tell you. You can just kind of feel it, and you can tell if it's a rubbery blend, then it's probably not going to take dye very good. Lone Star makes this Lima plastic. It's their lightweight plastic, and I might compare it to something like Vibram. It's not quite that rubbery, and it's not quite as rubbery as like their Delta or their Victor plastic. Or like you got other ones too, like Dynamic has like a can't even think of what it's called right now, but basically your putter plastics, your base grade plastics, your DX plastic for Innova. It's called Burst. There you go, the Burst plastic. Or no, it's something else, something Burst. That's Dynamic. But anyway, your base grade plastics usually aren't worth dyeing, but like I said, the harder plastic blends. And I'm not talking about like flexibility, because like Champion's kind of gummy and pliable and stuff. That's not really what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about like it's more of a texture thing than a pliability thing. Like if you run your finger across your eraser type plastic stuff, you can kind of just tell that it's got that rubberiness to it. It kind of grips, whereas your other ones are real smooth and they're just a harder texture. Just dyeing 101 stuff. Basically, I'm just trying to kill time while we're waiting for that thing to freeze anyway. You want to retrieve it for me now, my lovely assistant? Uh, I should always have a disc dyeing assistant. It's nice. Um, but yeah, when I remove a stamp, this is real simple stuff here. Um, this is a bottle it originally was like isopropyl alcohol, but now it's got acetone in it. And by the way, the reason I'm using this bottle, this is chemical safe plastic. Okay? Acetone will eat through like regular plastic, right? You got to make sure if you're going to store acetone, especially if you're going to mix acetone into your dye mixes and you're going to spin dye with it, you got to use the right storage containers. We'll talk about that on another one whenever we decide to talk about dye mixes. Okay, it's nice and cold now. So I'm gonna get my little cotton swabs here. I'm gonna make my little head thing smaller so I can show you what I'm doing better. Again, not a whole lot to this. I'm just going to use these little cotton swabs and acetone and wipe it off. As you can see, it's going away. Really not much to this. I say that every once in a while. There are certain companies that are worse than others. I'm not going to name names, but some stamps don't like to come off easily. And even when they do, sometimes they have like deep grooves, which is going to make your stencil dyeing even harder because all those grooves are opportunities for things to bleed. You have a harder time getting that, what you call it, your vinyl to seal real good. It only took 2 of those. Cool. I said I knew that stamp I knew was going to come off fairly easily. It's not real colorful. It wasn't real deep or anything like that. MVPs, Axiom discs are usually pretty fairly easy to remove stamps. Just like I said, I'm not naming names, but some company stamps are a nightmare to remove. All right. So, put that out of the way for a second. I'm going to switch over. At this point, I'm going to show you guys how I do all the prep for cutting stencils. So I'm going to show you like the computer side of it. As far as the stencil goes, we just bought it off Etsy. It was like $2.50 or something like that. A lot of times I do that. Um, there's lots of ways to create stencils. If you're trying to do like graphic art type stuff, more power to you. You should do it. I'm not really into much graphic arts. I can do basic stuff. I'm a CAD designer. I draw blueprints with computer software all the time, so people think I know a lot about graphic arts, but it's a very different application. Um, but um, I know a lot of people these days are using like AI to generate images, and look, man, if that's what you want to do, more power to you. I personally, I hate using AI. I don't use it other than, what my smartphone already has like preloaded into it. I don't use like the chat GPT. I don't use any of that stuff. The way I see it is there's a real artist out there making stuff and you're just taking work away from them. That's just my personal opinion though. You're welcome to do whatever you want to do. If you're interested on this channel, I've got a sermon about AI and the dangers of it. Anyway, though, I'm gonna share my screen on what I use a Cricut uh, stencil cutter. Um, whatever stencil cutter you want to use. A lot of people swear by the what is it, Silhouette Cameo? I think is what it's called. But I have a Cricut. What is it called? It's a Explore Air. It's one of the more basic ones because I really don't do anything but use it for just dyeing. I might make some decals. That's about it. I don't ever do any of the like fancy stuff that you can do with like the maker. Anyway, we're gonna share my screen. All right, so I got Cricut open here. I'm gonna show you some cool little tricks that I have. So I've already got some stuff preloaded. I go here to my stuff, and I've got templates, and I always start here with my standard template. And then I'm going to go to customize. Actually, let me back up a second and just kind of show you. There's some other stuff like I've got, like, you can barely see it on that screen, but this is like a yin yang base. This is like a Texas flag base. Stuff that I did quite a bit when I was doing these on the regular Team Lone Star disc base. This is a phenakistoscope template, which basically is just kind of a split up into like segments so that I can put an image in each little segment and it will make a rotating animated image basically. But my standard template is basically just a circle and I'll show you why I do that. And we go to customize because we're going to add to it. Alright, so what I got here, I just start with these two things. So I've got a circle that's, if you look here, it says draw. And same thing with the square. In other words, it's selected as a pin draw. It's not a cut. Okay, that's important. So my machine's not actually going to cut that. It's just there for me to align everything. And what I've got here, this square is 11.5 inches by 11.5 inches. And what that is that's the actual size of the mat that you're loading into the Cricut. So by having that, I center my images on that so that I take the guesswork out of where's the Cricut going to center and align this thing, right? This center point right here is the center point of my mat. And the circle is kind of among the same thing. I just kind of have it defaulted to 8.25 inches because, wow, my phone just decided to start talking to me. I don't want it to do that. Again, I don't like AI. See, look at that. So anyway, the circle is 8.25 inches by diameter because that's generally the size of most discs. 8.25 is usually the size of your drivers and putters. And I'm going to measure this real quick, and I bet you this mid-range is slightly bigger. Mid-ranges are usually on the larger size. They're usually like 8 3/8 to 8.5. Yeah, it's 8.5. So, but 8.25 still will get the job done for us because it'll show us kind of the boundary that we need to stay inside of. And actually, this thing has the little overmold on it, so it might be even a little bit smaller than that. So we'll keep that in mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to upload. We're going to add an image into this. I had already uploaded it last night as a test run, so this is what we're doing. This catch you later, alligator. We're going to hit get selected, and then we're going to hit add to canvas. If we didn't already have it here, we just click upload image, and then it would bring up a browser, and we go find the image and upload it. Alright, as you can see, it came in like way bigger than I wanted to, and I also don't want that little thing there. So I've got it highlighted. I'm just going to go up here and resize it. I'm going to go ahead and take the larger size and size that one down. Let's try like, I think I was messing with it last night. We did like 6.25 inches. That should do us pretty good. And what I'll do is I've got that highlighted. I'll just hold down Control, click the other one so I've got them both highlighted. I'm going to hit Align, and I'm going to hit Center. And there you go. It's got it centered up on the center point of our cut mat. Looks like I got a decent amount of room from all the edges, but it's also big enough that it's going to be a big, decent size on the disc. And that's pretty much it. The other thing you want to do is you want to highlight everything. You can do that, or you can hit Control A. And then down here you want to hit Attach. And what that does is it puts everything together instead of it making it like separate items, because otherwise it'll do separate cuts for each item basically. And then once we got that, we're just going to click on Make. And it's queued up and ready to go. When we're ready, you're going to hit Continue. And well, actually, I'll go ahead and show you that, because it won't actually start until I start it physically on the machine. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Continue and show you a couple other settings. At this point, it's just making sure it's connected to my Cricut. Sometimes this takes a while, and I don't know why. Restart my machine. Why? I don't know why it's doing that. And my Cricut has like a Bluetooth feature, but for some reason a while back it stopped working, so I now have it like physically connected through USB. It would be pretty annoyed if I have this going on. We might have to, if this is an issue, we might have to cut the live stream short, which wasn't what I wanted, but let's try something. Try this again. There it goes. I don't know what's going on with that, but all right. So This just comes preset because I use it so much, but yours might start off saying like vinyl or something here. This is just like an experienced, I've used the Cricut a lot, I've done disc dyeing a lot, use this setting, trust me. Um, you can look at, if you hit browse all materials, you can look at some other stuff like, it's like compatible, right? Artboard, cardboard, fabric, felt, foam, foil, iron-on. So all this different stuff, right? Here's all your vinyls, and when it starts off, it may have you on like premium vinyl or something like that, right? Or stencil vinyl, value vinyl, whatever. Down here, there's washi sheet and then there's washi tape. I'm not even really sure what these are, but washi tape is just I always use that setting. It's the best thing. And like I said, mine just comes preloaded on that. All right, and at this point, it's just telling me, okay, now load it onto your Cricut and hit start. So at this point, we're going to come back to my face. Okay, now we're going to load this vinyl sheet onto our Cricut board thing. Um, it's not a Cricut brand. I used to have one, but it got pretty gunked up, and I bought like 10 of these or something like that. So I've got a whole bunch of these for when my sticky kind of starts to wear off on them, I just switch out and get a new one. So because when you're doing this all the time, which I used to, you're cutting a lot of stencils and you wear them out. Okay, now I'm a note on vinyl. All right. There's a Facebook disc off dyers group, right? It's a great resource. Most of these guys, they're like me, or a lot of them have been disc dyeing even longer than I have. And it's a great resource. You can ask questions. You can go look at people's styles, and everyone's always posting pictures of dyes that they do and stuff. Um, but I have an unpopular opinion there, and they will swear up and down that there's this I can't even think of the name brand right now. Do you remember me talking about it? But event, but if you go on there and ask them what brand of vinyl would I do, like they all swear by this certain brand and type of vinyl. I tried it a few times. It is the worst product I ever used. I don't know how they use it. They get mad at me for saying that. I buy packs of vinyl that are just like they're cheap and they're generic. It's like a value pack and they come in different colors. That's why this one's brown because it's just there's all different colors, right? The other stuff that they use, the problem I had with it, and again it's going to come up a little bit later. Once I cut the stencil and everything, I'm going to put contact paper on it, contact paper, transfer paper, whatever you want to call that, and then I'm going to remove that white backing off of it. The problem I had with that stuff is I could not get this backing off without messing up my stencil. It was this stuff, the vinyl itself was so sticky that I couldn't remove the backing from the actual vinyl. And I'm like, it's made to work that way, so why would they design it that way to where you can't even get it off? I don't know what those people do. I don't know if they wrestle with it all night long, and I don't know. I don't know. I tried to use it and it was a nightmare. So I use this stuff and I love it. But anyway, that's just a rant about vinyl. If you're interested in what I use, I could find you the Amazon link where I buy it, and I'll tell you exactly what I use. These little things are great too, by the way. The little they're like little smoother things, and they got the little felt on them. That little felt edge is great for just smoothing it out, getting the air bubbles out of it and stuff, making sure it's all adhered. And if you don't know how this mat works, I mean, you just line it up within it's got a little square or whatever. And I'll be honest with you, there's always a little bit of overhang up here on the top. I don't know if you can see that or not. It overhangs that line a little bit. I'm sure it's not perfectly the right size. All right, now that's on there. I'm gonna load it in my Cricut and push start. Real quick before I start it, every once in a while pull out your blade and just check it and make sure you don't have any gunk stuck to it or anything. If you ever want to like sharpen the blade, here's a great trick. Okay, before you go out and buy a new blade, because a lot of times they aren't really that great. Get you a little ball, a little roll up a ball of aluminum foil, right? And just take that blade and just stab it a few times. That'll sharpen your blade a little bit and remove any like little gunk or adhesive that might be on it. Works great. That's loaded. Push start. And it'll take it a second. Because I have that square and that circle template thing on there, before it even starts cutting, it's going to draw. I don't have a pen loaded into it, so it's not going to draw anything. It's just going to go through the motions of doing that. Kind of a waste of time and effort or whatever as far as the Cricut goes, but the fact that it like auto centers everything for you, it's a huge. I don't know how to say it. I can't do it any other way. I am a measure everything, measure twice, three times, four times, cut once type guy. Like I'll use a laser pointer to line this stuff up. I don't really eyeball things or anything like that. I make sure it's all measured and right. And in fact, when I first started doing this, I didn't know how to center the thing. I just kind of let it draw it up. If you don't like center it or anything, it'll just default and put it in the top left corner, and it would cut it all up there in the corner, and then I'd have to try to figure out where the center is after that. But this way, you know that it's in the center of the mat. And it's going to take it a minute to cut. It's at like 7% right now, so we're just going to wait together. Hope everybody has a nice weekend planned to spend with your family, spend with your loved ones, maybe go watch some fireworks, have some barbecue, wherever the case may be, however it is that you celebrate. Hope you guys enjoy it. As far as tomorrow goes, I know that we're gonna go tomorrow evening go watch fireworks in Weatherford with Sarah's brother and her parents and stuff, and then we plan to go out to Glen Rose afterwards, and then Saturday morning we're gonna go play course Dino Hills in Glen Rose. It's supposed to be really cool. Supposed to be like similar to like Flying Armadillo, which is in San Marcos, and I love that place. But it's supposed to be similar to have like a little short putt putt par two style type course with lots of fun little obstacles and stuff like that. So I'm excited about that. I think she is too because she's seen my videos and pictures and stuff of Flying Armadillo, and she hadn't got to play it yet, so she's excited about being able to play that. Those courses are so much fun. Um, you play like your regular par three, par four, par five type courses and everything, and they're fun. But there's something I don't know, those little short, fun ones like that where everyone has a chance to make an ace. You don't have to be anything special to do that. You don't have to throw 400 feet to compete. That kind of thing. Those are always just fun to go out and play. I think there should be more of that. I think there should be a bigger uh, side of the sport. Like I was talking about this other day, it's like you don't have to if you put a basketball goal in your front driveway or whatever, you don't have to paint the lines and have a full court and have a team of 5-on-5. You can just mess around and play pig or something. It's a very American thing. Like it's not, no one looks at it and goes, why do you do that? So I love to just play disc golf in my backyard. Like yeah, me and her do that all the time, and that's probably my favorite thing to do as opposed to going out to a course. Yeah, I like playing courses too, but I just feel like everybody should have a disc golf basket in their backyard. It's great. It's as American as horseshoes, or it should be. All right, we're at 53%, still cutting, and I'm just talking at this point. I don't know. Yeah, like I said, guys, this is gonna be a longer one. I'm gonna go through everything, but I think this will be really helpful for people that have never really done any of this kind of stuff, or if you have done it and you're still looking for tips and tricks to improve. I've done a lot of disc dyeing, man. I'm a good resource. I encourage people to kind of pick my brain and ask me questions, and again, I can do just about any style you guys want to see. So if there's something you want to see, please don't hesitate to send me a message, to leave a comment on the videos, and just say, hey, could you show this style sometime? Like, you want me to do a cell dye, or if you want me to do a glue bed, or if you want me to see different kinds of spin dyes, you want to see how I hand paint a stencil or something like that. Because tonight we're just going to do a basic, just black stencil, and we're going to hot dip it, which is normally the way that I do like my black lines, my outlines, is I'd use a hot dip, and there's reasons for that. You're less likely to get bleeds from messing up the adhesive in your vinyl, as opposed to if you used alcohol mixed with dye or acetone mixed with dye, because when you do that, you could possibly eat through the adhesive or the vinyl itself, just because you're using a medium that's a solvent, alcohol and acetone, that is. So the hot dip, in case you don't know, is basically just hot water mixed with dye. And what I do, what I've got set up over there, is I've got like a electric skillet thing that is just filled with water and black dye. And when the water level gets low, I add more water. When the dye level gets low, I add more dye. When I first set it up, I use, I think, like 8 cups of water and an entire packet of iDye black, which is the black that I swear by. I don't really recommend using any of the other blacks that are on the market. The only ones I would really say that are even out there is people will use Dark Dungeon, which Dark Dungeon isn't black, it's like a navy midnight blue. Or they use Onyx, which is kind of a brownish black. Or there's another one that's out there too. I've got one called Cool Black, and then I've got one that's called like Espresso Bean. Again, none of them are quite true black. That's why none of them are called black. But iDye Poly Black is called just that, and it's the best black dye that for this purpose on the market, in my opinion. All right, it's done cutting. I'm gonna hit done, and it's gonna spit it out. All right, so now I got it. It's all cut on my mat here. My next step is I'm going to add my transfer paper to the top of it. I reuse the same piece of transfer paper until it's no longer any good. A lot of people will cut a fresh piece of transfer paper every time, and that gets expensive, and I don't know why they do it, because you can keep using them. I don't know why. That's just, again, it's the same reason. Oh, I remember the company name. It's called Oracle. There's a certain kind of Oracle vinyl that everybody likes, and they say it's the best on the market. I can't stand this stuff. But I also probably use a different kind of transfer paper than everybody else uses. I don't know. I don't follow the crowd. I don't do what everybody necessarily recommends. I'm not telling you not to. I'm just saying I have had great success with what I use, and I don't know. I'm a strong believer that if it's not broke, don't fix it type thing. Actually, before I do that, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm gonna take this. This is a fine pointed Sharpie. I'm gonna take my architect scale here, and I'm gonna line up my center point. I'm just gonna go from side to side. It's 12 inches across. I'm gonna mark it at 6 inches. I'm gonna take on that mark, just kind of draw a line. I'm gonna do the same thing on this 6-inch mark. And we're just gonna make a little crosshair there. It'd be hard to see on that. It's really hard to see for you guys to see on that black on brown, basically. I probably didn't pick the best color vinyl. I just grabbed the one out of the top. Sarah even said something. She's like, "You want to grab a different color?" I was like, "Ah, it's fine." I I really should listen to my wife more often. I'm telling you. Huh? Mhm. I also have like some crosshairs already drawn on this one, so I'm gonna try to line that up the best I can with the crosshairs I just put on there. Yeah. Take my handy little smoother outer tool. I don't know what it's called. Alright, then we're going to take that off the mat. Once you got the transfer paper on there, you're not very likely to like mess that up or anything. I'm going to put this fella back on there. This is just like the plastic sheet thing that covers the mat so that everything in your drawer doesn't stick to it, which is pretty smart. Alright, now, what I was saying earlier is, at this point, I got to take the backer off the back of it, and then we're going to align it up on the disc. In order to do that, I've got to move my camera and stuff because my laser pointer is right above the camera. I'm going to see if I can still like line this up so I can get it on camera how I align it. We're going to see. Again, my Dialab is not set up around the camera. The camera is just kind of rigged up the best I can. I got like it's on a tripod thing and it's just basically pointing down on my table. But I need to use that area of the table. So, move some stuff around real quick. Okay. You can't see me. Oh, sorry. And see that red dot? That's where the thing's all going to line up at. See if I can move this a little bit so we can get a better view there. Okay. So, just to show you guys something too when you remove this. Kind of get it started in the corner, right? And again, when I'm talking about the difference between this vinyl and Oracle vinyl, I fought and I struggled and I struggled and I could not get that off cleanly without removing pieces as I was doing it. I'm just going to show you something. When I do this, kind of pull it off parallel to it, like that, as opposed to pulling it up. Works so much better. But as you can see, I can just smoothly pull it right off. No issues. That's why I use this stuff. I don't know. Other people swear by the other stuff, and I don't like it. Alright. I'm going to line up the center point of this disc on the center point of that. Mind my OCD. See, I'm making it straight with the stamp even though the stamp's wiped. I don't know why. I do these things. I don't know. Okay. Then I'm going to slowly kind of put this down, aligning that center point that I drew with that laser pointer. Just lightly let it fall down. Grab your little smoother outer thingy. Start from the center and work out slowly. Don't go all the way to the edge. Just kind of go around. The reason being, if what you'll do is if you go all the way around and then or all the way down and then come around, you're going to end up with a wrinkle once you get to the back to the side, because again, you're putting something flat on top of something rounded. So if you kind of work slowly from the center and just keep going out a little bit at a time, you'll get all those air bubbles out and you'll get a nice smooth application. again, we have not removed our transfer tape yet. I always recommend getting it all smoothed out first. Another thing, like some people like to weed, meaning that you remove the pieces of stencil that you don't want on the mat before they put it on the disc. I find it much easier to do it on the disc, but if you're one of those people that's like, oh, I'm gonna put little marks on my disc, yeah, you will. Really not a whole lot of help in that. You're gonna put some really small microscopic marks on that plastic. You're gonna do the same thing when you throw it into a tree though. So I don't know, man. Just it makes it way easier is all I can tell you. It comes off on the disc a lot easier than it comes off of the mat. Alright. Once you get it basically to the edges, especially once you get past like where all your cut lines are, you can just kinda go ahead and smooth out the very edges. Alright. At this point, I'm just gonna remove my transfer tape, and again I'm using that same method of just kind of pulling it parallel as opposed to pulling it up and away. Running out of room for my camera stand there though, but always save that one of those pieces and keep, like I said, I'll keep reusing this transfer paper. I'm a waste not, want not kind of person. If I can reuse it, I will reuse it. Alright, turn the laser pointer off. At this point, so it's kind of stuck to my thing there. I'm just going to kind of, with my finger, kind of work it, those little edges around the edge of the disc. Now, what I like to do is I like to just fold the whole thing over, even while it's square like this, and just fold it over to the back side. If you don't like all that extra vinyl, by all means, you can kind of cut some of the excess off. You can use like an X-Acto knife or a scalpel. I use a scalpel. I mean, you use scissors or something too if that's what you rather do. I use a scalpel with my the stuff that I do, disc dyeing stuff. The reason I use a scalpel versus an X-Acto knife is because scalpels are flat. They won't roll off your table and possibly, stab you in the leg or something like that. So that's why I do it. And they're actually really cheap. Alright, once I kind of keep coming off the camera, sorry about that. But like I said, I just kind of work around and just kind of get it folded over the edge there. Once you kind of got a good start on it, you can just kind of press them down. Again, we're not worried about wrinkles that are like past those cut lines. Ideally, you want to get all your wrinkles onto the back side of this. I kind of do this too. I kind of press it around the inside edge like that. Just makes it to where it's safely out of the way and everything. Alright, so now what we're left with on this side is a stencil that we now have to weed all the stuff off of. And if I was making a nice edited video and everything, I would show you this and I would put it on like turbo speed. But I'm not doing that because I don't, this is real life. So yeah, you're gonna have to make me sit here and watch me weed this thing. I chose a not too crazy stencil though, so it should go relatively fast. I've done this a lot too, so. Move my camera back real quick though. Let's see if I can get a little closer to the action here. I always move it the opposite way that I think I need to. That's so weird that it moves more into the vision that way. There. Alright. My favorite tools for this is this came with my Cricut. See, it says Cricut. And it's just a little hook thing. And then it's a pretty good pair of tweezers. The ones that came with the Cricut, I don't like those. It didn't work very well for me. These are like makeup tweezers, so they're pretty grabby. And I would basically sit here with my hook and my tweezers and just start picking stuff out. Just kind of get close to a cut line. Ooh, did this not cut good? Oh, there it goes. Sometimes they can be annoyingly stubborn getting them started. And again, guys, like I said, this is going to be a long one. If you're not watching it live, you can by all means like fast forward past this part because I'm going to be doing this for a minute. I'm going to bring my trash can over here close to me. A lot of times too, I will grab like a paper towel for like the little bits and I'll just kind of wipe it on there. But again, if you're not watching it live, you're watching it on a replay or something, by all means you can fast forward and get to where this thing's already weeded. Although who knows what I'll talk about while I'm doing this, and you might miss some amazing insights and knowledge and wisdom. Who knows? So when I'm lifting this one up, there's a little piece of the A in the middle. I'm just going to kind of hold my little pointer thing down while I pull it up, and that'll kind of keep it that little piece of the A in place. This stuff right here, I mean, you just gotta, the more you do this, the more you weed and stuff, you get better at this. A lot of people, I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I have really good vision, okay? Some people have a hard time seeing these things, and they'll get like some like magnifying glass, like my buddy Troy and his wife, like when she weeds, she has like these glasses that have magnifying lenses on them and like lights, so it lights it up real bright. I do have a pretty bright light. I've got like a big fluorescent light like right above the table, so I do need the light. I don't really need the magnification. But if you do, I mean, do what you got to do that make whatever makes it easier for you. I say use whatever advantages you can. When she picked out the stencil too, I was like, why does it say catch you later, alligator? Isn't it supposed to be see you later, alligator? Then we thought about it and we're like, wait a minute, it's going on a frisbee. That's actually pretty clever. Catch you later. Yeah, so Sarah really likes alligators. I'm not a fan. In case y'all don't know this, we live really close to both Lake Worth and Eagle Mountain Lake here in the Fort Worth area, Texas. And there are alligators in those lakes. It's weird. You don't really think about it. You know, it's not a real common thing to see alligators around here, but we do have them. Sometimes when you're weeding these little pieces, they kind of it'll leave like the tiniest little piece behind. And man, you want to get it, but sometimes you cause more damage by trying to get that little piece than it's really worth. Like there's a tiniest little piece right there, and I'm like, I want to get it, but I don't know. Just don't know if I'm going to mess it up during the process. You'll see me a lot kind of flip over to the back side of that little hard hooked side, and just use that to kind of press things back down after I remove some. got that little piece. It was annoying me, I'm not gonna lie. Again, as I said, this one's gonna be a longer one. It's part of the reason why I decided to do this tonight. Um, I don't have any particular plans like first thing in the morning tomorrow. I'm off work, so I just thought if this runs long, at least I don't have to get up early in the morning tomorrow. And something you'll learn, that's part of the thing. It's like doing dye beds, doing spin dye, stuff like that. It's a much quicker, easier process, but stencil dyeing is a much more involved, time-consuming process, which is, part of the thing that if you're planning on getting into like, you know, doing custom disc dyes, like kind of to make some side money, well, if people want stencils, you got to be kind of weigh that option to see if that's something that you really want to do or not, because it is time-consuming, and people often don't want to like pay for the time that you spend on it. And this is like the majority of the time right here is like weeding the stencil. Again, and it kind of depends on how complicated the thing is. Some designs aren't all that bad, and sometimes you can kind of just get into a little flow state. And like I said before, sometimes this is a really kind of therapeutic process for me at times it was, because I'm a very, I like doing methodical things like this sometimes, so didn't really mind doing this. Put on some music or something and just kind of enjoy the process. I am not going to put on music right now because this is on YouTube, and YouTube will come back and send me some copyright warnings and stuff like that. So, sorry, no music tonight. Unless, of course, my boys over at Disciple want to sponsor my YouTube channel. Come on, guys, let me play your music. I'm your biggest fan. Well, I don't know if I'm your biggest fan. I'm a fan. I enjoy you guys' music. Saw him in concert back in November. If you guys don't know it, don't know the band, it's a great, like, Christian hard rock band. Maybe you call it metal. I don't know, but with just a good message, dude. These guys they're really good, men of God that they're more about spreading the gospel message than they are about making money, making big hits, that kind of thing. Their music, it glorifies God. I really enjoy it. All right, we got Catch You Later picked out. And just keep going with the process. In case you're unfamiliar with kind of the whole concept here, um, what we're attempting to do, when you do these vinyl stencils, is I'm masking the whole disc, and then I'm obviously removing the part that we want to cut out. If we were making a sticker, I would remove the bulk of it and I would leave, well, the part that I'm removing now. But the part that I'm removing now is where the dye is going to be. So everything else will be masked by the vinyl. What will be left is black lines after we do the hot dip on everything that we weed out. So essentially, we'll have the alligator, the image, and the words and everything will be replaced with, black dye, and we will have, this permanent art on our disc. And like I said, I really like doing stencils. It can be really time consuming, but what you're left with is something that's yours. You can find an image that's just something that nobody else has. Whereas, You know, you get something with a, even if it's got a rare stamp, it's still a stamp. And you know, I'll tell you, like, that's the thing about, you know, disc manufacturers. They're not really in the business of only making like one of something. When it comes to like stamps, you know, they're gonna make a whole batch of them. I mean, I've got a custom stamp disc. I showed it to you guys a second ago, and it's whenever I was sponsoring my disc golf team with Ninja Disc Golf. We have this, we called them chain assassins. So we've got this, I don't know if it's supposed to be Sub-Zero or Scorpion, like a ninja on there, holding like, kind of looks like he ripped the top of the basket off, and he's holding that, and he's holding a like a disc that's on fire in the other hand, and it's there's chain assassins on it. So that's a custom stamp that we had designed, and we had it stamped on. I think like there's a grand total, like, I don't remember the exact number, but it wasn't a whole lot. It's either 40 or 50, something like that, discs. So, you know, there's people out there that are lucky enough that they got one, and there was, besides the people on the team, I've given out a few, I've sold a few, and I've still got quite a few of them. Not a whole bunch, but I think I've got like 5 or 6 of them in my personal collection. That's just what was left. And that's cool because it's like, well, this stamp doesn't exist anywhere else. But at the same time, like I said, there were still 40 or 50 of them, right? Because that's how the manufacturers work. They're not going to do just, well, they might do just one, but the whole thing is you got to pay for all that. You know, the die, you got to buy the die for the stamp itself, and that's cost. I forgot how much it cost me. I think it cost me like something like $200 or something to buy the die, that design of the stamp, big metal plate or whatever that they burn the foil into the plastic with. And then you gotta basically say, well, now that you have it, I'm gonna buy so many discs with that stamp on it. You may be wondering, like, oh, well, I thought you were a die artist. Why would you do that? Well, as I said before, there's certain kinds of plastic that you don't really want to dye. They don't really hold up they don't hold the dye very well. And that's what, those are Victor plastics, so they're not good for dyeing. But the ones I had dye were harpoons, and I love the harpoon, that mold, and I like it, especially in Victor plastic. I feel like that's the most useful, and I just thought I'm gonna give my team members, everybody else, and myself a useful disc as opposed to just a cool looking disc. So I was like, well, how can I still customize it and show everybody, you know, these guys are part of my team, give them something unique. If I can't dye that disc, I'll just have it custom stamped. So there you go. But again, it's much more unique. So like I said, I had 40 or 50 of those things made, but there's plenty of stencil dies I've done where that's the only one like it, period. You know, you can customize it way more that way. And a lot of times that's just because you do a stencil that's really difficult and not everybody wants to go through the problem of doing it. Some are easier than others. Like I've done tons of Texas flags, and that's really not all that complicated to do. It's pretty simple, you know. It's literally just basically 4 pieces, like section, 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 star, and that's it. It goes pretty quick weeding it and everything, and I usually use lotion paint to put the color to it, and that's that. But I've got some more complicated stencils, something like this one. That takes a little bit more time to put all the work into it. And what's, you know, Sarah's going to be left with here is something that's really custom. And like I said, she picked the stamp out. She loves alligators, and this will be something that, you know, when she shows somebody, it's like, I bet you've never seen a disc like this. And chances are, they haven't. And if you ever play around a disc golf with me, that's one thing I can tell you. There's not a plain disc in my bag. Even like my putters and approach discs and stuff that are putter plastic, I have rare stamps. Like I don't use just the regular factory stamped ones usually. It's just something I like to do. I like to have unique stuff. And the fact that I'm a die artist, because a lot of people will be like, well, why do you want all those really unique stuff? Because that just makes you feel worse when you lose one in the water or can't find it because it went in the woods or something. But it's like, eh, I know how to make this stuff. I'll just make me another one. Don't get me wrong, I still try not to lose them, but I don't get heartbroken over them. They're just frisbees, guys. Now, granted, if anything, what usually hurts my feeling more than anything is when I find one that flies just right for me, because I am a player still, and I do have my favorite discs that just work the way I want them to and everything. So that's kind of sad when I lose one of my best throwers. And that has happened. And for the most part, they usually come back to me because I always put my names on the discs, and people are usually pretty cool about returning them when they find them. Not always, though. I've had some people find them and then they try to almost like ransom the things or something. Like, what are you willing to give me for it? I'm like, you know what? Keep it. I don't like playing those games. I'm usually pretty cool though. Like if you return it to me, I usually offer people a free custom die if they'll return my disc to me. Especially if it's like something sentimental. Of course, I've had other times where people are like, I found this disc, got your name on it, and I'm like, oh, I lost that like 4 years ago. I don't even use that disc anymore. And they're like, well, do you want it back? I'm like, do you want it? They're like, I could throw it. I'm like, just keep it. Like honestly, when I first started playing disc golf, I really didn't know what I was doing, and I threw a lot of like 13 and 14 speed discs, and I'm not telling anyone that they can't throw that stuff, but I don't have the arm to throw that stuff. Of course, back then, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand the flight numbers and what all that meant, and I just loaded my bag full of stuff that I had no business throwing. Nowadays, I don't throw anything over 11 speed. 11 speed is my long distance driver basically. I don't really need anything else. There's a few 12 speeds I throw, but if it's going to be a 12 speed, it's got to be something kind of understable so I can get some turn out of it. Like trying to throw a destroyer, nah, I ain't got no business throwing a destroyer. Too overstable, too high speed. I'm not going to get the flight path out of it that it deserves. There's no point in throwing it for me. Maybe if it was lightweight enough, maybe. But again, eh. I don't really see that I need something like that very often. Now I do throw a Nimitz, which is like Lone Star's version of a Wraith. So 11 speed, basically an overstable 11 speed. And then my main like distance driver is a Curl, which is similar but just a little bit more understable than that Nimitz. That piece does not want to let go, and gotta be careful with stuff like that. Sometimes the cut lines don't quite want to let go the way that they're supposed to, and you have to be careful because you could end up tearing into your section that where it's not supposed to remove. It's just one of those things where you kind of over time and doing this a lot, you kind of just learn to kind of have a touch for it and kind of go around that area and maybe come at it from a different angle or something. It's usually the best thing you can do. There it goes. Well, we're an hour and 6 minutes into this, and it's still going to be a little while. So, again, as I said, this is going to be a long one. Maybe it's not one I should have done as a live stream, but eh. If you're not watching it live, if you're watching this on replay, feel free to fast forward through all of this. Because after this, I am going to kind of explain the hot dip part of it. Which I explained it a little bit already, but I'll give you guys more insight into it when I get to that part. No, somebody commented the other day on that last one I did and said that I was like the James Conrad of disc dying, and I was like, what an interesting compliment. I don't think I've ever been told that before. Um, and I think what he referred to was that I was really calm. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen like the memes or the videos or jokes or whatever about James Conrad and how he like never gets like really upset, and like when he does, it's really understated. Like he just doesn't really get flustered. He's just a calm, laid back type of guy, man. And generally speaking, if I'm just dying, that's how I am. Because to me, this is kind of just a relaxing thing to do. I'm a person that likes to do methodical things. I'm not saying I've never gotten frustrated. Sometimes when I make a mistake, I do get pretty frustrated. So none of us are perfect. As that good book says, we all sin and we all fall short of the glory of God. So I'm no exception to that rule. I'm not perfect and I'm not always calm, but I try to be. I'm certainly, since I got saved, which is only about 2 years ago, I'm certainly more at peace, generally speaking. God has definitely given me a new level of peace in my life, and for that I am very thankful. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I didn't foresee this being as long of an ordeal as it's probably going to turn out to be, but one of the things I kind of, I don't know, I don't really have aspirations of being like a big content creator type thing. Like, I know how to do a lot of the editing and make really nice videos and everything, but it's very time consuming. I have a lot of stuff going on in my life, and I don't really, that's part of the reason why I'm doing just live streams instead of saying, okay, well, I'm going to record this and then I'll go back later and edit it and add effects and do all these fancy things to make a really good quality video tutorial type thing. And not saying I can't do that, not saying I won't do that. It's just something, not something I'm really looking forward to doing right now. Give me a second, my nose is kind of running. Ugh. Grab a drink real quick too. And again, you might be seeing me do this now and you might be going, oh, this is why not every die artist does stencil work, because it is tedious. It is time consuming. So there's plenty of people, plenty of really good artists that they just, they're not doing this. Or at least they're not doing this for, they're not gonna like do custom jobs or anything, because it's just one of those things. It's like, again, people don't really want to pay for the amount of time it takes to do these kind of things. I mean, there's definitely some discs that I've done where I've spent 8 to 12 hours of work on a disc and make a real beautiful piece of art. But people only want to pay so much for a disc. Now I might be able to sell one for maybe $100. Not saying that's unheard of, but for the most part, people just don't want to pay that much for a frisbee that they're going to play disc golf with, because there's always that chance that they could lose it, and why do you want to pay that much for it, you know? And I've had some jobs where it's like I felt like I did a really good job on something, but the customer wanted it a certain way and I didn't quite understand it, and they get really mad at me, and it's like the fact that I sold it to them for like $40 and I still spent hours and hours and hours on it, where that $40 isn't far from what I get paid for like 1 hour of work at my job. It's like, dude, not to mention if I'm charging 40 or $50 for a disc, a lot of times that doesn't even include, I mean, there's the disc itself is $25, $30 sometimes before I even do anything to it. So yeah, the profit margins just really weren't there for me. That's part of the reason. Now, the business I was trying to run, or I was running, wasn't just a custom disc die business. We were really no different than, say, an Infinite Disc or OTB or something like that, as far as we had a website where you could buy all sorts of disc golf supplies. The only difference really being is that I'm doing it out of my spare bedroom and they have a big warehouse. So it is hard to compete with people like that have that kind of selection. So maybe someday return back to the disc golf business or whatever, but right now I'm content to just be a good husband, serve in my church, and die some discs for fun here and there. And of course, I'm never going to stop playing disc golf. That's the original thing that I first learned to enjoy, long before I dyed a disc. I played for over a decade before I ever dyed a disc. I didn't ever think I'd be able to do it. It's kind of funny. I had like I said, my friend that helped me start the business, Troy. He, him and his wife introduced me to disc dyeing, and again, it was just something we wanted to play around with one time. And after the first time we did it, we're like, this is kind of fun. We're gonna try some other things. And then I, just on my own, really kind of went down the rabbit hole watching YouTube videos and stuff like that and really learning the craft, buying supplies and everything. And it's definitely been a rewarding thing. Like, not to say that I've ever made a lot of money or anything, but I've met a lot of people. I've found a hobby that I really enjoy, and I'm far better at disc dyeing than I will ever be at disc golf. I don't really even consider myself much of an athlete. I play disc golf because it's fun. At this point in time, like, I'm not even a PDGA member anymore. I used to be sponsored, and again, I mean, I was an amateur sponsor. I wasn't anything special or anything, and it's almost a running joke now with Lone Star Disc. I mean, there's jokes people were making that, like, at one time some guy made a joke because he was trying to prove a point and he got his dog signed up to Lone Star Disc and just made a big joke about it. And I was like, well, in order to get sponsored by Lone Star Disc, you also have to have a PDGA number. So if you're throwing Lone Star Disc under the bus, you might as well throw the PDGA under the bus too, because your dog got a PDGA number, right? So that's all just a money game anyway. They'll sponsor anybody because really all the sponsorship is a guaranteed customer for them. And it's free. It's not free, but it's advertisement. That person that's sponsored is out there advertising your product. And I'm not saying anything bad about Lone Star because it's a brilliant business model and they make a really good product. Uh, say what you want, they make quality discs. Their glow plastic glows better than anything on the market, second to MVP. Um, and that's saying something, man. That's pretty impressive. They haven't even been around all that long either. I think their first official disc came out in like 2017, 2018, somewhere around there, and kind of took them a while. Then in 2021, um, sorry, the 2022 season. I got signed in 2021, but it was for the 2022 season. I was on their first sponsored team, and like I said, there's all these jokes that, oh, they'll sponsor anybody, and I'm like, well, there was only like a grand total of like 150 of us on the first team, so it wasn't like what it became later, where it's like they had thousands of people and they would just take anybody. Although at that time they might have taken anybody also, but not as many people knew who they were. And at that time they only had eight molds to choose from. So there wasn't any restriction on how many discs of theirs you had to throw, because they knew that most people couldn't build a full bag out from their selection. But man, it was those early days that I really enjoyed it, especially because I never thought, not even being that good of a player, that I could ever be sponsored, and it really helped kind of catapult the company I was trying to start. I got a lot of contacts through the team and stuff like that, so learned a lot about the business side of disc golf. And again, if you're watching me, just kind of making small talk while I'm trying to weed this disc. There's a lot on it. I said I took on quite a undertaking with this stencil. Trust me, it could have been a lot more complicated though. I've done some really complex stencils over the years, so we did one that was, it's, wouldn't say it's an easy one, but it's that moderate level. It's not particularly difficult. There's just a lot to it, is all. Whereas I have done some that, I mean, will really test your patience because they are difficult to weed. This one isn't necessarily difficult, just a lot. Hi, Sarah. My lovely wife just re-entered the room. We're good. I think it's just me. I don't think I have any live viewers, but Sarah is alive and she's viewing me, so she corrected me. I have one live viewer. And again, I don't mind. I mean, like, as I was saying before, I really don't, at this point in time, want to take all the time and effort to do really top-notch edited videos and everything, so that's why I'm kind of just doing the live streams. That way I could just kind of die discs and just record everything that I do, and if people want to sit through all of it, I promise you I will give you some nuggets of wisdom that you could definitely learn to be either learn the craft from a starting point, or you'll learn something to make yourself a little better if you're already out there doing it. Because I have done a lot of disc dyeing and I've learned a lot about it over the years. I think I've probably done more Texas flags and more Texas Rangers dyes than probably anybody else there is. Ironically, I've also done a lot of Boston Bruins, but not as much as some people. There's a guy, B Bombs dies, Brian Bombria or whatever. That guy does a lot of Boston themed dies. He's definitely done more Bruins dies than I have. Not to mention there's another guy that was on the team with us for a while that was based out of Boston, and he does a lot of those Boston Bruins and Boston Celtics and etc. and so forth. I did do quite a bit of sports teams dies. I was happy to do Texas Rangers ones though because that's my team. and I did a couple of the World Series champions dies. I was really happy when that happened. We waited a very long time for that to happen here in my corner of Texas. It's coming along. Sometimes every once in a while I get to like a little stopping point where I'm like, do I want to come at it from a different direction or what? I don't know. Just gonna keep going this way. As I was saying earlier, it's like the bigger pieces, I just throw them right in the trash can sitting next to me, but it helps to have like a little, there's like a piece of paper towel here that I just, a little tiny piece that I just wipe on there rather than trying to sit there and fidget with it, trying to get the tiny pieces off of it. Just wipe it on the paper towel and keep going. We're at an hour and 24 minutes, and we still got a ways to go. Yeah, like it's like weeding this thing is kind of one of those weird things that I don't know, like you just get a feel for it the way that I do it. Sometimes like there's certain pieces I know I can kind of tug at it and it'll let go. Other times it's just like, no, you can't do that. It's just gonna make a mess. You're gonna tear something. How do you know the difference? I don't know. Experience. Just keep playing with it. You'll get used to it. Especially, again, I use a cheaper brand of vinyl, but I use consistently that same kind of vinyl. So I've gotten used to like the feel, the performance of this specific vinyl. And I cannot tell you what the name brand of that vinyl is. I'd have to look up like my Amazon purchase history or whatever to remember. But like I said, I'm not a big fan of the Oracle stuff that it seems like most of the dying community swears by. Will I tell you not to use it? Nope. I just tell you that I really struggled with it when I tried using it. I bought a whole bunch of it. I dyed like 2 or 3 discs with it, or at least I tried. I think I successfully dyed one disc with it, and all the other ones I tried, I just got so frustrated that I just packaged it all back up and I sold it at a discounted price to a disc dyer friend of mine that was like, "Oh yeah, I'll take it." And I was like, "Okay," because I did not want to use it. And I just went back to ordering the cheap stuff that I was used to. As I said, it's just a personal preference thing. Same thing goes with like the cutting mats that I use and the transfer paper that I use. I use light tack as far as the tackiness of it. A lot of people use like medium or hard, and that stuff is just like way too sticky, and I don't have success with it. It doesn't just causes me a lot of grief, I guess. I don't know what else to put that. Um, Now, kind of going back to what I said about like how that other stuff wouldn't come off of the backer for me. Possibly, if I would have had a stronger tack uh, transfer paper, that would alleviate that problem a little bit. So again, play around with your own preferences and see what you like. Because I don't want to knock anything. Like there's more than one way to do this stuff. Just because somebody does it a certain way doesn't mean that that way is definitely the only way to do it or something. So, as I said before, if there's a certain style you want to see me do, by all means, let me know. And I can promise you, when it comes to other methods, they won't be this time consuming. Like I said, stencil dyeing is the most time consuming thing, and if we do another live stream, what I won't do is all of this part again. We might do like some other aspects of stencil dyeing. Like on this one, like I said, since it's blue plastic, I don't want to try to hand paint this thing, but I often will do like, the black outline and then, paint the interior. If you guys log into my Instagram there, every disc I've dyed, well, not every, but majority of discs I've dyed, I've got pictures of all of them there on my Instagram and Facebook, so you can peruse all the stuff I've done. And I've done a lot of dyes. I've done some very intricate portrait type things. I did a portrait of somebody's cat. That was one of the more difficult ones I did. And then I had other people ask me to do that at other times, and I was like, no. It was so difficult. I was like, I'm not doing that again. It's not worth what people want to pay for it for the amount of time I have to spend doing it. And a lot of that is like, that time is like the digital prep side of it. I'm taking a portrait and turning it into a stencil was a real pain. Again, I'm not a digital like graphic artist. I know some people that do like graphic art stuff, and then they got into disc dyeing, and they're definitely big into stencils, and they probably know a lot of shortcuts and better ways of doing things that I just don't know. So that's one of the main reasons why I won't do portraits, pictures, whatever. Now there is one thing I want to try. I've never done it. Call it a spiral Betty, and you can take a picture, and what it'll do is it'll make like a spiraled image of it to where, man, I don't know. You can literally, if you guys Google it, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. It just makes a black spiral. It covers the whole disc, but you're just basically weeding an entire spiral or whatever, and what's left over makes a perfect picture. And you can basically, I think there's like programs websites, whatever, that you can put any image into it and turn it into a spiral Betty. And that was a big trend for in disc dyeing for a while, that everybody was doing that. And I never did one. I don't know why. It's probably one of those things, like a lot of times whenever I was doing it, you know, professionally selling my dyes, I would just, I would basically work on just custom orders. So unless somebody asked for something, I just never really got around to doing it. So if nobody asked me to do a spiral Betty, that's probably why I never did it, because I just didn't get a request for it. But maybe we'll try that. Maybe that's another one that we can do a video for. But what I probably won't do next time is I won't do a watch me weed the disc for 3 hours. Well, it's only been an hour and a half total so far, so. But I still am not done weeding this disc, so. Who knows what the total time on this video is going to end up being. Again, it's not part of my plan, but I knew that this was going to be long when I decided to do this theme, whatever. Because I've done plenty of stencil dyes over the years. I know how time consuming they are. I knew what I was getting into. But again, as I said before, I won't have to get up in the morning. Yeah. So that's why I decided to do this tonight. I think one of the hardest things about like doing live streams like this though is just trying to keep you guys from sitting there in like dead silence. I don't want to. Like I said, I wish I could like find an artist or something that's like, yeah, play our music during your thing. That'd be great. But again, I won't do music because copyright, copyright. I doubt they're gonna sue anybody like me, but they'll just make me take down the video or mute it. So we won't have music. Huh? Yeah, you can do the copyright free music. There's some resources for that, but it's usually not very cool music. Sometimes it's catchy stuff, but it's like you just use those things that have lost their trademarks and stuff, like Happy Birthday and like Amazing Grace and what? Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. How we wonder about your trademark. What? The stencil? I mean, it's alright if you're into alligators, I guess. Sarah's talking about how cool this stencil is going to be. She's like, and I'm just like, well, if you're into alligators. And she's like, that's me. Yeah, when we first kind of started dating, I made her name's Sarah, so she got a Triceratops dyed discs, and she still loves that one. She's actually required by law to say that that's her favorite dinosaur. That goes for all you Sarahs out there. I don't know if you're aware of that, but it's the law. And again, everyone feel free to fast forward through this part if you're watching this on a playback. If you're tuning in live, you can't fast forward me, haha. Sorry. Alright, where to next? We're getting there. We don't have a whole lot left now. But some of the stuff we got left is some pretty small, detailed stuff. Although we already kind of took care of a big portion of that already, so that's good. So, I know that there's a lot of, like the dye artists that I have watched on YouTube and stuff, that they use their turntable for everything, right? I use the Lazy Susan more than I use the turntable. I don't really use the turntable unless I actually need a motorized turning thing, right? I just feel like I can get closer. I don't have all the other boxy part of the turntable in my way and stuff, so. And again, like I was saying before with the dye beds, if I'm going to use a want it to be on a thing where I can turn it on that, I'll use this Lazy Susan as opposed to the turntable, because I do not want to like get dye down into like the electronics of that thing, especially when I'm messing with Floetrol, because that stuff is messy. Always has been for me. I've always said, as far as I'm concerned, that is the messiest dye method there is, that I've used. And in case anybody's wondering about that, like, talking about different things that you can use to dye discs, because uh, there's certain things that like are kind of staples that we do, but there's not necessarily like some kind of rule that says this is the only things that you can do. The dye that we generally use, the main stuff that I use two main products. It's mostly Pro Chemical and Dye, and they basically make they branded this stuff calling it disc golf dye, right? It's made for disc golf discs. It's really no different than their standard fabric dye, but they handpicked and mix certain colors and stuff and market them and everything, and they guarantee that it's going to work on our, you know, disc golf plastic. The other one that I use a lot is iDye, but iDye makes different products. They make stuff for natural fabrics like cotton. That stuff will not work on our discs. Do not buy iDye for natural fabrics. Only buy iDye for polyester, because that's what the plastic and polyester are essentially the same thing. It's a polymer. Polyester is a polymer flat fabric, a fabric made with plastic polymers. Carpet has plastic polymers in it too, right? So um, that iDye poly is another one that I use, and these are both of those, Pro Chemical Dye and iDye poly, they come in a powder form, and then you have to mix them with some kind of medium to use them basically. But both of those are like water soluble. They're activated by mixing them with water. You always need to mix them with some kind of something that has water in them if it's not just straight water. Again, we're going to do a hot dip where I've got just a big skillet full of water and black dye. And that's what I'd use to dye black lines, right? Um, Before we did shaving cream, and shaving cream is the only thing that I use where I don't mix the stuff with water before I mix it with the other part of the medium, because I'm guessing that the shaving cream just already has enough moisture in it that it activates it without adding any water to it. I don't know the exact scientific reason for that, but I've never needed to add any extra water to the dye when using shaving cream. Um, but like I said, the reason I'm bringing that up is because there's certain mediums that I like to use. There's the things that I mix the dye with, and then there's the things that I use that I add the dye to make a bed. We talked about shaving cream. We did a shaving cream bed. We talked about Floetrol. And you could do different things with Floetrol. I did the Blossom, but you could. The most popular use for Floetrol that most people do is cell beds, where you're pouring the thing. And when it has silicone oil, that makes it kind of form cells, where basically it kind of splits up and creates little pockets of color and that kind of stack on top and intermingle with each other. I don't really know the proper way to explain that, but if you've seen cells, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Um, then I like to use glue beds, where the dye is mixed with either acetone or denatured alcohol, and when you put it on, I use clear glue. You can use white glue too, but it's a different consistency, and it's I don't like using it. I haven't had much success with it because it has a different consistency, a different movement, different viscosity, so it produces a different effect than what clear glue does. In the clear glue, I'll use the dye that's mixed with either acetone or denatured alcohol, and then when you place it on top, what's going to happen is that acetone or alcohol will evaporate, and you'll be left with the dye floating on top of the glue, and it won't really soak into the glue. Maybe if you let it sit long enough, it might, but the glue dries out and hardens, so that usually doesn't happen. But it's a really cool method, and we'll do a glue bed. We'll do some glue bed stuff where I can kind of show you what I'm talking about. But I guess what I'm getting at is we have these standard things that we do where with me it's only a couple things or a few mediums that I like to do. I use Floetrol, I use lotion, I use acetone and denatured alcohol, I use shaving cream, and of course I do the hot dips. Beyond that, I don't really do anything else, but there's no like rules to this. Again, as long as you're keeping in mind that the dye is, you know, activated by water, play around with different ideas if you want to. I know there's some people that use laundry detergent as their mixing agent, and they get really good results with it, similar to what we do with lotion. And they say it's a lot easier to clean up because the laundry detergent is already soap. You just add water to it and clean your brushes or whatever with it, right? Um, I've seen people use dish soap as a medium, a mixing agent, whatever. So I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at is like there's a lot of options that you can do. I'm going to show you like the methods that I like to do, but that's not saying that you can't try other things. Um, and again, I'm just talking about the different things that you do with these certain powder dyes. Then there's other dyes as well. There's worm dip, and that's the reason it's called that is because it's actually meant for like fishing lure, like plastic worms. That's what it's marketed for. But it's a plastic worm, so again, it dyes plastic, so you can use it on our discs. And what's cool about that stuff is it's like pre-mixed already. You don't have to go through any mixing or anything. You just buy it and just open the bottle and just go straight to using it. And it comes in, a chemical safe bottle. It is acetone based, so it's very similar to what I use for like spin dyeing and stuff, and also for glue beds. It has a little bit different consistency. I personally don't like using it for glue beds because it kind of has a weird reaction with the glue. Kind of hard to explain. You can use it. I'm not saying you can't use it, and I have used it with glue beds, so no rules to that either. You might get different results than me. There's also different companies that do it. I strictly used Quick Coat Worm Dip, but there's also a company called Spike It Worm Dip, and they're different products, so they might be a little bit different as far as how they react with the glue beds or whatever other thing you're trying to use it for. You can also use that stuff on shaving cream. I've done that as well. You can use liquid dye with shaving cream, and it produces a different effect, but it's still something that you can get some cool results with. I did that to make like storm clouds on this one disc. It was a battleship like at sea, and I used the you know liquid dye on shaving cream to make this like cloud effect type thing. It turned out really cool. So again, it's kind of cool how you can see how things create a certain effect, and maybe for one project or whatever effect that you're trying to create, it just doesn't work, but for another thing, it's like ideal. And that's art, man. I don't know. You always find cool stuff like that. And again, if you're watching this, I am filling time with words while I'm reading this disc. But yeah, man, play around with dye and different methods and just have fun and experiment. I mean, that Floetrol blossom thing, it's weird because nobody really used Floetrol for anything except for cells that from what I was seeing. And when I sat down with that idea the first time, because I had used Floetrol and I kind of knew how it worked, and I had done glue beds making concentric circles, and I had done blossom dyes using lotion, I already had the two concepts in my mind, and I was like, I can make concentric circles with Floetrol, and I can use that to make a blossom. I already knew ahead of time. I was like, this is going to work, and I know this is not something that anybody else is doing. So again, when you start playing with stuff and seeing how it performs, you get those ideas that you're like, aha, it's fun. Discovering art, discovering methods. And that's why I like to just share what I know, because I know somebody out there is going to go, well, I took what you did and I added a little extra element to it, and I'm like, bro, that's awesome. How come I didn't think of that? And again, the channel that the YouTube channel where I basically learned all this stuff and decided to start doing it, is that the difference is doing it. And that's kind of what his channel is all about, is he was one of the first people to do what no one else was doing, because people have been dying discs for frisbee golf for decades, but nobody was sharing their information. It was kind of this niche thing there. It's like, well, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to corner the market by just not telling people what I do. And Bobby got into it, and he said, no, I'm going to share it with everybody, and I'm going to grow this art form and this hobby. And since I know he's not the only one that did it, but since people started doing that, the amount of innovation that's happened in disc dyeing over the past, you know, 5 to 10 years, it's been pretty amazing. Really, it kind of all started with like the COVID boom in disc golf. We got a lot of new players in disc golf during those years because of the COVID lockdowns, and then these things were already in place with disc dyeing, and that's when the innovation really kind of skyrocketed. That's when I got into. I dyed my first disc in 2021. I'd been playing disc golf for over 10 years at that point, but that's when I got into disc dyeing. All right, we are almost done. Getting there. He's got the sunglasses, and he's got some little spots on the side of his face right here, and then we'll be done with the weeding. But then there's another step, dun dun dun, before we actually put dye on this thing. And pay real close attention to like how your cut lines are supposed to be, and keep in mind like what do you want to be black, what is meant to remain with uncolored. Again, it might be to remain white or whatever if you got a white disc, but in this case it's going to remain blue. But just kind of keep that in mind when you're doing this. The very first few stencils I did, I would often get confused on which ones I needed to weed out. I'd be get a good ways into it and be like, oh, I'm weeding the wrong things, and I'd have to start over. I mean, just rip everything off and then start completely over with the whole system. And sometimes that might seem like, nah, man, I would just go with it. But here's the thing: the dye and the vinyl and stuff like that isn't necessarily cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than the discs themselves. So waste the dye, waste the vinyl before you waste the disc. If you're not sure that that's what you want, then just throw it out and start over before you actually start adding dye to it. Because I've done that. I've dyed stuff just because I didn't want to start over, and then at the end of it, I was like, ugh, I should have just thrown that. Especially with dye beds, I'll do a dye bed because I spent all the time on it. I was like, no, I'm gonna go ahead and put a disc in it, and it comes out, and I'm like, I knew I shouldn't have put a disc in there. That did not look good. So don't be afraid to throw out a dye bed. Don't be afraid to pull all your vinyl off and start over. Again, it is a time-consuming thing, but again, I'd rather waste the materials than waste a piece of plastic. Alright, got these little circles on the side of his head over here, little spots, and then that's the last of the weeding. We are now almost 2 hours into the live stream. And as I was saying, there's other dyes out there. I just basically told you all the ones that I use now. Um, I use Pro Chemical and Dye is my main go-to. I use I dye poly, and I use quick coat worm dip. Again, there's also spike it worm dip, also highly recommended. If you're gonna buy worm dip, make sure you get the unscented stuff. Again, it is made for dyeing fishing lures, so a lot of times it's scented to smell like garlic or fish. I don't know the different scents they have. I know one of them is garlic, but they are strong scents, and I would recommend not getting scented ones because it will make your disc smell as well. That's one of the great things about using cocoa butter lotion as your medium because it'll leave it smelling like coconut, like cocoa butter. Smell good for a little while. The smell doesn't last forever, but it lasts for a little while, and it's pretty cool having a disc that not only looks cool but smells good. Um, Alright, we are done with the weeding. Catch you later, alligator. Now, would it be nice if I just throw it in my bag just like that? It's done, right? Unfortunately, it's not. Which is a nice time to throw in that little tidbit. If you're watching this and this is strange and unusual, and you're like, why can't I just put a sticker on it? Why are you going through all this problem? Why can't I just paint it now at this point? Why do you need to dye it? What is that all about? So, PDGA regulations, Professional Disc Golf Association, says that you cannot legally use a disc that you have altered its weight or thickness from its original factory produced condition, other than by normal means of wear and tear through playing. You know, if it loses a little chunk of nicks of plastic or whatever over time from just throwing it, that's different. But I can't paint it, I can't put stickers on it, that kind of thing, because that alters its weight and or thickness. But you can dye it because that does not do either of those things. Now, technically, it does alter the weight, but you're talking about such an insignificant weight change that the PDGA doesn't care about that. You also can't even aftermarket stamp the thing. That's another thing too that they're hard on about because they again, that alters the original factory condition. Now the factory can stamp it. I guess the factory, that's the whole thing. They get certified to do so. Really, I think that's just kind of a money grab because I wanted to buy a stamp machine and stamp my own discs and stuff, and that's part of the reason why I didn't, because I didn't want to get into like a sticky situation where the PDGA was saying, hey, your discs are not approved now because you stamped them. And again, I would probably not even, I was going to buy a small stamp and I was just going to do it to bottom stamp the back plate with my company logo. That way I could, well, really, ideally, what I wanted to do was get in good with a company that would just make me blank white discs. I would have the bottom stamp put on there. In fact, I probably could still probably do something like that if I wanted to start a business. If you want to get into business, maybe if you buy enough discs from a company, if you work something out with them with a manufacturer, you might get them to just give you factory blanks that are just bottom stamped with your logo. Again, you'd have to pay for the die and everything, the stamp die, the metal plate. But that was ideally what I wanted to do back in the day. That way I could sell all these discs that said Ninja Disc Golf on the backside and they'd be blank on the front, and I could just dye them with whatever I wanted to do, stencils or whatever. And since they wouldn't have a stamp on the front, I wouldn't have to mess with the trickiness of the grooves in the stamp that might cause bleeds. Which brings us to our next step. Alright, we've got it all on there, but again, there's that stamp was on there, and there are little grooves and stuff in that plastic that if we just dye it just like it is right now, you're gonna have some bleeds from that vinyl basically not completely adhering to that plastic, especially where the groove lines are, right? That's why I use this. So this is just a plain Jane hair dryer, right? I'm gonna get the vinyl hot. I'm gonna use like the back side of my little tool here, and I'm just gonna push down all around all the edges and everything and get lots of uh, good seal on this thing. Not only is this gonna help the vinyl kind of shrink and adhere to the plastic and around the contours, but it's also going to get that adhesive hot and help it fill in all those cracks and grooves, right? Now, when I do this, it's going to be loud. I'm actually probably going to go ahead and mute my microphone. That way you don't have to listen to the hairdryer, but you're not going to hear me either. I'll try to do this as quickly as I can. So hang with me. Alright, I'm going to mute my microphone now so you don't have to listen to my hairdryer. I will be back with you. Okay, and we're back. Well, I was here the whole time, but I'm back with my audio. So, real quick, I'm gonna turn on the my skillet and get it warming up, because now we're ready, almost ready, I should say, to get this thing some dye on it. We're a little over the two hour mark on our stream here now. Now you kind of see how much work goes into some of these stencil dies. So if you have a die artist that you like to get custom work done from, and you wonder how much work goes into it, now you got a glimpse into that. We certainly put in some time doing stuff like this, and that thing with the hair dryer right there, that's something that not everybody does, and the quality reflects that. The extra time, the extra steps that you spend just add to that finished product of how well it's going to look and everything. um, as far as using that hair dryer, that's something that I've always done. Maybe not like the first couple times that I did stencils, but I quickly learned that that's a good practice. You don't necessarily have to use a hair dryer. There's other methods that people use to heat the thing up, and then go through and just kind of seal it all up. And again, you'll notice on part of that I was using, most of it I use like the back side of my tool here. I'm just using that side to just kind of push everything down. But on some of the really little bits, I just use my finger, because if I try to use that, it might end up actually kind of pushing them around and stuff, and I don't want to do that. I always pay close attention to the spots where there's actually, you can see the stamp lines, and you really just want to get all the air bubbles and everything and get that really adhered right there. If you get close to the edge of the disc, with your cut lines, then you might actually want to take that hair dryer all the way to the edge and then kind of just smooth out. I don't know if you can see that. Like, where am I at here? Yeah, like smooth out the little creases and everything. You do want to be careful using that hair dryer like that. The longer you put it on there, the more kind of brittle you're making like the thin spots of that vinyl, and you could tear it real easily by getting it too hot. You'll kind of like, you'll make it real elastic, and you'll kind of just pull it apart. So be mindful and don't get it too hot. Also, you get it way too hot, you can warp your plastic. That's also part of the reason why I use the hair dryer and I don't use like the heat guns. The heat guns get really hot. I would burn my hands probably in the process too. Even that hair dryer, sometimes I get my hands a little singed. But again, you could also, like I said, some people will do other methods, and one of the things that a lot of people do is they'll do a hot dip before their dye hot dip. They'll do just a hot water dip, and they'll just let it float face down on that water, in that hot water for a couple minutes, and then they'll pick it up, dry it off, and then that'll have heated up all the vinyl and everything, and they can then push down all those things and everything. Um, in doing that and creating that heated up vinyl and heating up the adhesive, we're going to have a lot more adhesive to remove later on, but you're going to get a better product in the end. It takes more time. Um, it can be pretty tedious, but you're going to get a better dye that way. Um, I'm warming up the hot dip thing. You want to try to keep things no hotter than about 120 degrees. If you got like a thermometer, like a laser thermometer or something, that'd be a good thing to use. I don't have one. I know from experience using this particular skillet that I have. My older skillet was a little bit different. This one, I actually set it to like 150, but I know that it's not actually that hot. Again, it's just kind of a cheap, like Walmart electric skillet, and because of that, it's probably just not very accurate on the temperatures that it says. I used to set it closer to like that 110 to 120 mark, and it wasn't getting hot enough. Um, Again, you do need to watch your heat though, because if you get it too hot, you can warp the plastic, and that's something you definitely don't want to do, right? It's gonna mess up the flight path of your disc, right? But let me just kind of check and see if it's warmed up enough yet. It says it's ready. Let's see. what I do is, yeah, it's got just a little bit of steam coming off the top, so yeah, that's what I want. And I'll just kind of, I keep some popsicle sticks right here by it, and I just kind of mix it up a little bit before I get it ready to go. Um, Much like a dye bed, you don't really want air bubbles on top. It's a little bit less serious because you can just put it back in or whatever. Um, I'm going to turn on my little, I should have done this earlier, but I turn on my little air filter thing here because again, I've got steamy water with, you know, dye in it, and I don't want to be breathing in those fumes, at least not too much of them. I'm going to get a couple paper towels ready because when I pull this thing, I'm going to want to kind of dab it off. Don't scrub it, but just kind of dab it dry. What I usually do is I let it go like 5 minutes at a time and just keep checking on it. You kind of learn what to look for, but just try to make sure that you get a nice solid black on there when you start checking on it. And if it doesn't look done, put it in for another 5 minutes. It usually takes at least 10 minutes of exposure on the dye, but if it goes more than about 20 minutes, you're probably doing something wrong. Um, Champion, clear, plastic, whatever does take longer, so don't be surprised with that. Then, yeah, you might need 20 to 30 minutes of floating on the hot water. Again, I keep this stocked and ready to go with black dye. You can do any color for hot dips. I like to just do black because that's just one that I do a lot. You know, you're gonna have a black outline, and then later on you can color it whatever. But it's easy just to keep the black ready to go. If I did different colors, I'd have to like switch it out the water every time, and a lot of people do it where they keep them like their different hot dip colors in water, like in a mason jar or something, and they keep like a dedicated like saucepan or something that they use over and over, right? No rules again. Do what works for you. All right, we're gonna get it started. And again, it's kind of like putting it into a dye bed. Kind of roll it in there gently. Try not to catch the air bubbles. And I often kind of do a little soft spin to just kind of, if there are air bubbles, maybe to dislodge some of them. My mod clock, it is 9:12. I'll check it at 9:17 to see how it's going. And a lot of times if I'm busy doing other stuff, I'll set a timer on my phone. Getting close to the goal here, guys. I know, like I said, this is a long process. I knew when I decided to make this video, this would be one of the longer things that I could do. Just keep in mind, I could keep going with this. I could hand paint the thing too, so you can do as much work on these things as you choose to do, right? There's really no limits to this. This is art. You know, how long did it take Michelangelo to do the Sistine Chapel? But he didn't have a cricket though. All right, I'm gonna clean up a little bit real quick. I got these little things I'm gonna put back in their bag. I don't know what you call these things. Cotton. They're not cotton balls. They're like cotton pads, whatever. Kind of prefer those to cotton balls, but I use either one to like as far as like using them to wipe stamps. That's kind of the only thing I do with them. Um, when I was doing it for a living, I went through a lot of them. I wiped a lot of stamps. I'm gonna go ahead and get that down because we're gonna need that in a little bit. Put my hair dryer away. Hey, what'd you fall over for? I don't exactly have a spot for my hair dryer actually. I just realized that. And we just put it right in there. That'll work. These guys up, put this guy up, that guy up. Throw that away, that guy up. If you're doing this like, waiting for things to process, cleaning up your workspace is always an ongoing thing, so it's always easier to do it as you go rather than just wait until you're completely done and then having to clean up everything at that point. At least that's my philosophy. But you know, I'm just one guy that dyes discs. What do I know? In the grand scheme of things. Hey, what are you hanging up on? There we go. I hope that if you guys stick it out and watch all of this, that you do learn something from this little tutorial. And again, it's more than a tutorial. I'm doing a whole, you're seeing everything that I do. But I hope that you learn something and it inspires you to do some of this kind of stuff yourself. And again, when I'm doing this stuff, it's like, man, that's a lot of work. You're spending a lot of time on stuff. And usually that's how it is like, but when you see that finished product, that's when you go, oh, okay, yeah, I am interested in that. At least that's how it was for me. You know, I didn't know how much work went into it, but when I saw the results that people were getting, I'm like, man, that's really cool. And again, before I got into doing it, I never considered myself an artist, and when I saw like the finished products back then, I'm like, hey, there's no way I can do that. Started watching some of the YouTube videos, and I'm like, okay, well, if you just break it down into steps, it's really not that bad. Especially nowadays when you got like, you got like products like Crickets, and they'll do some of the artwork for you, and yeah, the real artwork that I do is like the spin dies and the die beds. This is just technique. You just gotta spend the time doing it. Still think Bobby's got one of the best names for his channel because it's called The Difference is Doing It, and that's kind of what it comes down to. It's like, you know, it may seem overwhelming until you actually sit down and do it. Then you're like, you know, I guess it's really not that bad. I can do this. And that's kind of what his channel and what I'm trying to do is all about, just to kind of inspire people and teach them something about what we do and show them that they can do it too. Y'all can do this. It's not that bad. Take a little time. Now that you know what our secrets are, just taking the time and getting it done. All right. What time did I say? I think it's ready. I think we said 9:12 and then 9:17. It's 9:17 now. Okay. It's probably not going to be done, but I'm going to check it. I do like a halfway. Like I said, it usually takes about 10 minutes, but go ahead and look at it real quick. Just going to kind of pull it up. Looking pretty good. I did get a couple air bubbles, so we're definitely going to have to put it back on there. And again, just put it right back in. We'll check it again at 9:23. Again, we're close to the finish line, people. We're getting there. Luckily, I don't have to work tomorrow. um, when we pull it out and it's all, we're satisfied with it and it's all dyed up and everything. Again, we're gonna have to, we'll do a quick wash, in soap and water, um, and then we'll remove the vinyl. After we remove the vinyl, what's gonna happen is there's gonna be like sticky adhesive stuff all over that. The good thing is, again, we'll wash it before we remove the vinyl. I'll probably wash it again after I remove the vinyl. And I'm just trying to make sure that the dye, the dye that hasn't soaked into the plastic, because again, we're gonna have dye sitting on top of this thing basically, right? We want to get all that dye washed off completely. That way, when we're left to clean up all that adhesive, we can just use this. We can just spray this on there and then just scrub it off. Still going to be some scrubbing involved, but it's way better doing it that way than trying to do it the old-fashioned way, which usually what I ended up doing is taking like bits of vinyl and just plucking it off little by little. That can be very tedious. I wore my fingers out doing that plenty of times. So the Goo Gone method is way better. One of the problems that you might have with that is it will smear the dye sometimes. Um, Most of the dye will wash off of the disc pretty easily, but it won't wash off of the vinyl. So what I'm getting at is a lot of times with the dyes that I was doing professionally, the hot dip was just like one of the steps. After I hot dipped it, I would basically remove all but the interior parts of the vinyl, and that would leave me like an area to do like a background dye. Let me just kind of show you an idea of what I'm trying to say here. So let's say I would remove everything around the alligator, but I would leave the vinyl over the alligator and the sunglasses, right? Because I would later on like hand paint that area inside, but I would want like a background dye on everything else, all this negative space out here. So what that means is I would leave vinyl over the alligator basically. So then this isn't really an option because if I spray this on the vinyl, it'll smear it off the vinyl onto my disc, and then I'm gonna have like black smudges and stuff all over it. So in those cases, I would have to do it the old-fashioned way and just pluck all that adhesive off little by little, which could be a very tedious process. But luckily, I'm not gonna hand paint this one, or at least I'm not doing a background dye. I don't think we're gonna hand paint it. We're not really gonna worry about that because again, it's a blue disc, so we won't get a full color to it. So we're just gonna Goo Gone and just wipe everything off. We're gonna remove all the vinyl completely, and then we can just spray the Goo Gone after we've washed the disc off pretty good. So more tidbits of information, right? And if you were thinking that there wasn't much to this, now you're seeing how much goes into the craft now. Is definitely an art form. It's definitely a lot of technique, a lot of craft to it. Similar to what people encounter when they first try playing disc golf. They're amazed that we have all these terms like hyzer and anhyzer and flippy and beefy and neutral, like, and how we can make things curve around trees, or we can throw straight laser beam shots, and we have all these different options that we're able to do. And then you don't even talk about like rollers and thumbers and tomahawks and grenades and all these different throws. And it's one of the things I love about disc golf is because there's just as much that goes on up here as there does that goes on right here. There's a lot of thought into what we do to line up and craft our lines and the throws that we're gonna throw. So, all right, let's check this thing again. Hopefully it's done. We're just looking again. When we looked at it the first time, it was pretty good coverage, but it had left some air bubble spots. Yeah, that looks pretty dang good. I'm liking it. I'm going to grab my paper towel and just kind of dab off all the excess that's sitting on there. All right. Mm, I'm actually going to put it back in for a few more minutes. After I dried it off, I see a couple little light spots that didn't fully get as dark as I wanted them to. A few more minutes, guys. Sorry about that. This one will probably be not as long. I'll get like another 2 or 3 minutes. We're almost at 2.5 hours. I can tell you right now, This is like my new record for the longest live stream. Well, for disc dying. Um, Random trivia, if in case you're wondering this. I started as I'm Crossroads Disc Golf now. That's what we decided to call this thing. But before that, my company was Ninja Disc Golf. That's when I actually had an LLC and everything. We were starting a business and everything, and I walked away from that. I had a lot of reasons. More than anything, what it comes down to is I felt like God was telling me that He had other plans, He had other calling on my life, and that was just a kind of a trivial way for me to spend my time, and just time for me to walk away from it. It's not like I made a lot of money doing it. It was more just kind of an ambition that I had. I wanted to kind of leave my mark on the disc golf world, right? But anyway, before Ninja Disc Golf, I started off before I had anything. I just had a YouTube channel and like a Facebook page where I had started in 2020 of just like streaming video games, which I'm not even really that big of a gamer. I wanted to try streaming, right? I was trying to try content creation or whatever, and I was streaming under the name Nothrog Ninja. So that's where it started off. So uh, yeah, those were the humble beginnings, and somewhere along the way, uh, well, I guess what I was trying to say is during that time, if I was streaming me playing video games, and yeah, sometimes I'd be streaming for 4 to 6 hours or something like that, just as long as I wanted to spend playing games. I didn't have a lot of viewers or anything. I really wasn't that good at the games I was playing anyway, so eh. Um, I don't know. Anyway, random information. All right, let's check it. Let's hope that it's done. I'm willing to bet this time it should be pretty complete coverage. Just kind of looking at those few areas where it's kind of hard to explain what it was doing. It's kind of a I just got black dye on my arm. Um, I don't know how else to explain it. Sometimes it's just kind of, the first time through it kind of had an air bubble there, and when I put it back on, it got rid of that air bubble, but there was still kind of a thin spot there. So when you pull this off, what you're going to end up with is just like it's just solid black now, right? It was brown before, but now it's just like black, 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 right? Okay, so bear with me. I'm going to go wash this off. Then we're going to go through the next step of removing all the vinyl. I'll wash it one more time. We'll do the Goo Gone, and we should have a finished product at that point. I'm going to mute this for a second. I will be right back. Actually, keep a dedicated, like, disc drying towel in this room because this is where I do my disc dyeing. Um, this is also where I do my regular job when I work from home. I have we have an office in Fort Worth. That's where I normally work, but I shouldn't say normally. It's about half and half. About half the time I'm at home and half the time I'm in the office. So this is this computer and my other computer is right here. So well, not right now. It's not, but my monitors are right here. My laptop is put away. My work laptop, that is. Both of my computers are laptops. Strange world that we live in now. In case you don't know, I'm 44 years old, and I remember the days of big, giant, bulky, one-piece computers that had big old thick monitors with picture tubes, and we played Oregon Trail on them. On Commodore 64s or Tandy. I don't know what the models were called, but we had Tandy computers. I remember that back when I was in elementary school. The good old days. That was like before Windows. I remember when Windows was invented. That's how old I am, y'all. We used to just have DOS. MS-DOS. That's where all your computers started. Technically, you still do. It's just you don't see it anymore. Alright, so I'm basically I'm doing this down there, but I'm just removing the vinyl. I don't need to be real careful with it at this point because I've washed it off to make sure I don't smudge a bunch of black dye. Generally speaking, I shouldn't. And I'm not trying to save anything, so get it off. And I am going to have to go back to, I don't know why I put it all away. I am going to have to go back to this guy and the tweezers here in a second, but this part goes a lot quicker because again, I'm not trying to be careful. I'm just trying to get it all off. So no more delicacy at this point. Just get it off. Again, as I said, when we first started this, I was kind of worried about how many scuffs and things like that were in this plastic and whether or not it would take the dye good, but it came out pretty good. I don't think we really had any issues there. And again, when you're doing just like a straight black dye, that's pretty safe. I mean, it's going to take better than any other color, you know. And the good thing is like, okay, so say we were doing more work on this, once you get like the black lines on there, you can just dye over them. You don't have to cover them or anything because it's black. It's not gonna take any more color. It's already as dark as it can get. It's like we were talking about earlier. Dye is not like paint. You're not going over something. You're changing the color of the plastic itself. So you can only go darker. Similar like tattoos or something like that. Like, you know, if you got black outlines or whatever, you can't really. All you can do is cover that up with more black. So same thing goes with this dyeing. Once you get a certain darkness to it, I mean, all you can do is make it darker. If you ever do make a mistake when you're disc dyeing, if you act really quick, like right when it happens, you can sometimes remove some of the dye with acetone. That happens a lot with like, if I'm doing hand painting or um, spin dyeing, sometimes I make a mistake and I have to act real quick. And if I'm able to be quick enough, I can fix that mistake before anyone knew I made it. sometimes this part can be time consuming too, trying to get through it quickly, but still gotta get all that vinyl off. And again, because we took that step of using the hair dryer and getting everything really well adhered, well, it does make this process right here take a little bit longer then, because again, it's really well adhered. But the good thing that you're probably already noticing is the lines are really clean. I don't have any bleeds. And if you are a person that does this and you get bleeds and you're wondering what you can do to cut it down, that hair dryer thing, it helps a lot. MVP stamps are pretty forgiving too, as far as like they don't have a lot of really deep grooves in them. That's where you're going to get a lot of your bleeds, is in those lines of the stamp. Like after you remove them, if they've still got deep grooves, you can get a lot of bleeds. No matter how hard you try to seal them off, they just don't really seal very well. Again, I'm not going to name any names, but there's some companies, yeah, their stamps leave some deep grooves. And if you are curious about that and you're like, why is he not naming any names? Like, what are you trying to hide or whatever? I'm just being kind. I'm not trying to smear any companies or anything, because, you know, gotta remember that the point of a disc manufacturer making discs isn't to make them easy to die. You know, their ideal thing that they're trying to do is optimize for throwing. You know, it's like, remember, there's a sport here. It's not just about our art. So I don't want to make any of these companies like call them out because, oh, your stamps aren't easy to remove. Well, they didn't make them for the purpose of removing them. So in some cases that can be good, even with disc dyeing. If you want to, if you're a person that leaves the stamp and you just want to dye over the top of it, well, then those kind of stamps are beneficial to you, because there are a lot of companies whose stamps can get easily damaged from some of the stuff that we do. But some of those more hardy stamps that are hard to remove for stencil dyeing, well, then they're really great for when you want to save those stamps. So there's no use in smearing anybody, because there's good parts to it. Alright. Hope the guy that watched me the other night and called me the James Conrad of disc dyeing still feels that way after about me, because this is a long one. It's a lot to stick with if you're going to watch this thing. And again, I kind of fully expect you guys to fast forward and find the parts that are pertinent to what you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to learn. And you know, when I rebranded this thing and called it Crossroads, just want to emphasize that my biggest aspiration for people is to teach them, not to say teach them, but share with them, you know, I said about 2 years ago I got saved, you know, in the middle of me running a business and everything. I just kind of became, I was born again. I became a very different person. God just granted me peace and clarity and direction, and it was amazing. It's literally the best thing I've ever done in my entire life, and it makes you really understand that the whole purpose of our lives is to glorify God and to live for His purpose for us, for His design for us. And you want to talk about like finding the key to being, I don't even want to use the word happy, but to being joyful, because there's a guy I like to listen to. His name's Jimmy Evans, and he does a podcast called Marriage Today. And one of the things he talks about is, you know, happiness. That word happy comes from the same root word of happen or happenstance. So to say that you're happy, well, that just means that you're happy right now, but that happiness depends on what happens. It's all dependent. But to say that you find joy in knowing that you're in relationship with your Creator, with the Father of the universe, man, that's a whole different level of of a good feeling, you know. So that's my biggest, you know, the word I'm looking for. That's my biggest aspiration for this channel and for people that come to watch it. Because again, I've got disc dying videos, but I've also got some sermons that I've done at the church and everything. And you know, I don't really consider myself a preacher. I'm more of a teacher. I teach Sunday school class, and you know, I love to share what I learn, whether it be disc golf related or I even more enjoy sharing the Word of God. But you know, He loves you, and He can bring you true purpose and peace and direction in life, and that's what He's done for me. And we got a completed die here, man. It looks pretty good. I'm gonna clean it off again. I'm gonna do some Goo Gone. You don't really need to see that part. I'm just gonna remove the adhesive from it and everything. But until then, I will just say wish you a happy 4th of July. I hope that you're out there and you're safe. That you know if you're gonna drink, do it responsibly. Don't get out there and drive. If you're gonna light fireworks and stuff like that, do it responsibly. Try not to catch anything on fire. Think about your pets and don't freak them out too much. Leave them with a sitter or something if they're gonna be alone. And just have a good time out there. And happy 4th of July to all of you. May God bless you and keep you. And I will catch you later, alligator.